Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Todd. We got Andy with us, as always. Today, we're doing a podcast, which I think I already said. But before we jump too far into it, this is going to be airing on Christmas Eve. When you're watching this, if it's Christmas Eve, Santa might be floating around up in the sky, dropping off presents to children in their homes and stuff like that. Which sounds kind of weird, to be honest, but that's kind of something we celebrate. And I'm celebrating as well. I've got this tree right here. That's my Christmas tree this year, pretty cool. It's decked out. And actually, now that I think about it, for Christmas, actually, I got a gift. I got a gift for you, Andy, for Christmas. Check this out. So I've got this box right here. Okay. What's in this box? Now, I'd give it to you to open, but we're in two different locations, so I'll open it for you. Check this out. It's the writer's block sweater.
Oh, my sweater came in.
Yeah, no. Maybe you paid for this, and maybe it's not actually a gift, but check out that merch.
Look at that.
Cool.
That's fresh.
Now, for all of you at home, you're probably thinking, I should do that for Christmas too. But also, this is Christmas Eve, and so it's too late, and I apologize.
You should do it for Christmas.
Well, you can't because
that's true.
Yeah,
you can put a nice little IOU.
Yeah, well, there's birthday gifts, birthday gift ideas, or get this for your kids for Easter. That's a thing people do, I think. Happy Easter! Here's a sweater.
Here's a sweater.
There's a whole number of things. Or
if you're just feeling, generous.
Yeah. Or if you want to get ready for next Christmas, because who really wants to wait to the last minute to get gifts when you can start the day after Christmas?
Exactly.
So yeah, little promo there.
All right, that's a good promo. We don't really do that. I don't really keep tabs on the Twitter anymore, which is not good.
Yeah,
but
we're not good at trying to make money with our
stuff.
Anything. But we are good at world building and character development. Or character building? World
building and character, yeah.
So I'll let you start with this one. So we're kind of picking up off of what we
I don't know if I should really. I think you should start because we had to cut it short when you were in the middle of explaining how you were building your world. So I don't want you to wait. You had to wait a week.
Oh, I'll be completely honest. I have no idea where I left off. Something I probably should have looked into before we began filming this episode.
I probably should have looked into it too. I don't remember.
All right, well, that's it, folks. That's the end of the podcast. From what I remember, I was going over world building for the world in one of my new story ideas. And I know we had talked about looking at world like cultures and history and politics and stuff like that,
because you definitely I don't want to say take it more seriously, but have definitely a better understanding on how to do it, because you have, for your stories, you have to create these elaborate worlds and ideas because of what the story you're trying to tell. Mine is just small town running around. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't have to come up with all these different political, I know we talked about that last week, political ideas or how government and there's another thing too.
Histories, stuff like that.
Yeah. Histories like this. I mean, I have a little small history, but it doesn't really take or play a part in this first book, which I still have yet to continue working on. It's almost January, and I said by March I wanted to have it done. So
no time like the present.
No, there's no time like the present. Maybe I'll do it after the podcast ends, after dinner.
Yeah,
maybe. Probably not, for being brutally honest.
Yeah. So I think something I know we talked about last week was when it comes to world building, the amount of effort that is necessary depends kind of on the storytelling and what the center of the story is. If it's a person or if it's a group or organization, movement, or the world itself. Like for example, in the story I'm working on, this dystopian series, the world in a way is kind of the main character, because you're watching the world develop through all these situations, I guess, scenarios of climate catastrophe or political strife, and civil unrest and changing demographics. One of the things that I'm looking at in the series is, at least for the first couple books, is like over the next 25 years or so, like the vast majority of the world population will be located in the cities. And so, how does that look in the future? You're talking about, I think it's like 70% of the world's population will be in urban environments. So like imagine all the cities that you normally go to just being more and more populated, more in a more dense way. So how does that affect transportation, mass transit, politics, uh, air pollution? If everyone that lives there in that city is driving a car, might get a little foggy, a little, I have to wear those. Like, I think, was it in China or so? There's a city in China where the pollution was so bad you had to wear masks, and so China ended up actually. I know there's a couple cities there where they've focused on like green energy, like they've worked on like forest cities where rooftops are covered in either grass or some kind of whatever. So point being is that kind of like taking all this stuff and trying to like put it into the book to show like potential solutions to what we've got, and also uh some I'm going to focus a lot also on the bad stuff that'll happen, because up until this point we really haven't done a whole lot as a species to combat climate change, so to speak. We've made a couple of things. We've got some solar panels and some nice cars that are running off of batteries, but um, like statistically, it doesn't have that much of an impact. So it's like, how can I show? I think I've talked about this before too. It's like, how can I show these negative effects on a kind of grand scale, but then also show a path through that? Because like, even though it might be bad in the future, you still have to try to do better. I guess in a way, the book will be a little political, because obviously, if you don't believe in climate change, you're probably gonna not read it. But you know,
Yeah, that's true. That is.
but I mean, it's still a work of fiction, because it's taking time. Like I mentioned this before too in a previous episode. It's taking this timeline of what could or would happen based off of the current predicament, and it's compressing it to a much shorter version of events. So like stuff that happens in the 2040s in my book might not happen until the 2100s in real life. So it's making it a bit more action packed, I guess. But yeah, and then but it builds off of that too. Though. You go from this sort of climate focused book with political strife and changing demographics into a sequel that focuses more on a concentration of power amongst corporations, that ended up sort of being kind of like the secret or silent winners of the first. But it's a whole thing I'm still trying to work out. But the world building a part of that is super important, because the world itself is what you're looking at. And the world isn't just the planet Earth. It's the locations, it's the people, cultures, demographics, the histories. It's all of it all together. That's how I look at it, anyways.
So, like, as you're building this world, and then do you stop after a certain point and then think about maybe a character or two that is going to fit within this world, or do you have to have the world pretty much complete before you character build?
So I develop characters when I'm working on the history. So, for example, something I was working on today is this project called the Green Detroit Project, and one of the character that I created for this project, her name is Carolyn Sadiq, and she is the person who kind of like is really pushing this project. And this kind of goes back to that whole green city thing I was talking about earlier, where you plant trees on the rooftops and stuff like that. And her idea was to try to reinvigorate Detroit, Michigan as the future city with the project like that. So in designing this kind of future Detroit, I'm also building this character who I don't know if she'll have a huge part to play in the book, but she'll be, like I'm developing like I guess at the very least I'm developing historical characters that could be referenced in the future. You know,
Okay.
although like main characters, I haven't really. I've got one, uh, but I haven't focused too much on that yet. I'm still trying to figure out exactly like what's going on. I'm still doing some of the research for that. But
Honestly, I think I did it the opposite way. So I started last September, like really starting to really focus on my novel. And I think I sat down and did characters first in my head, having like the idea of what the town is going to be like. I think I did. Yeah, I did like the main character that you're going to follow around the most. And then I did the town, just a little blip, and then I continued with the characters. So it was kind of a back and forth, but I was mostly concerned about the characters more or less than the town itself, only because like we talked about last week, it didn't have to, it was more practical. It was something, it's a fictional town, but it has like a setting that I'm, been around,
yeah,
so to speak, like,
like a setting
seen,
you're accustomed
yeah,
to.
yeah, seen firsthand, understand. But that also could be a challenge too, because then you assume everybody knows what it's like to work or grow up in a small town where you thrive during the summertime,
Yeah,
where the bulk of your income is for tourists. And then maybe in the wintertime, if you have, say, a ski resort or
yeah,
like I know there's a place called Saranac Lake that has an ice castle, and it's close to Lake Placid, which is that Lake Placid is a historical town because it held the 1980 Winter Olympics where United States hockey team beat the Russians.
huh,
So you can go visit all these shops. So you can do that all year round.
yeah.
So, but so I tried to incorporate both of that sort of thing in
All right,
mine, but
that's cool.
yeah, I have to think about how, like, maybe I don't know if you've ever been to a small town that is never like that. You go in the winter town, you can throw, a football down, the main street and not hit a car or a person.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I've been to what I would consider small towns in Florida, but I don't know if they are small towns. So, like, the one that comes to mind is like Winter Haven, which is I don't know if it's really a small town technically. I always thought of it as being. I mean, it's smaller than where I'm from. I feel like, but it might just be a small city as opposed to a town with a single. Because I know where you come from is like a few thousand people, right?
Yeah, I
Something
mean,
like
where
that.
I'm from, they call it the city,
Yeah,
and then there's the town of, but it's not. I don't know the demographic, but I know my high school graduating class was like 100, maybe 120 people.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know the official numbers on Winter Haven, but I probably haven't actually seen or been to like a traditional small town
I mean,
like what you're describing.
yeah, like where one of my camps is located in the Adirondacks, it has they before they voted to shut it down, it had a one-room schoolhouse. That's how
Yeah,
small. And then you had to bus to go to high school. You had to bus a half an hour to go to the
yeah.
high school. And that high school graduating class has maybe 14 kids,
That's
maybe.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, but
yeah,
that town, it's called Old Forge. I
yeah,
don't know. That's where there's a water safari. So it's a water park that's open in the summer. And then it has shops and restaurants up and down the main drag. So like that's the bulk is the summer, but then you have snowmobiling season in the winter if you have a good winter. if you get a lot of snow, then you build your revenue that way. But if you have like a cruddy snow or no snow at all, it's dead.
Yeah.
Same thing in the summertime. If it's rainy all summer, no one wants to go, then you're kind of toast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah,
But
it's definitely important when you're, and it's just something I try to remind myself too, is when I'm writing, is to try to make sure that the reader gets all the information necessary, as opposed to just me thinking that the reader knows everything. You know, like when I say small, for example, now that I think about it, if I write small town in my book, I don't know what that really means. You know, does that mean 3,000 people? Does that mean 40,000 people? You know, and so what is, if I don't really know what it means, what is the reader thinking, and so forth. So definitely being as specific as possible
uh,
is important for sure.
yeah,
But to go back to what you're saying about you focus on characters first, and it kind of goes back, like kind of like reconnects with something I said previously, which was like it depends on the focus of the story. So like for your novel, you know, the focus is, you know, that back and forth between the main detective and the main antagonist and people in between. And you know, those are more like, for this book I'm working on, those, all the characters are more like, they're more like side characters to the world itself. But to point to a different book I wrote that I've previously written, um, I wrote this book a few years ago called the Enigmatic Marston. I haven't talked about it a whole lot, but that was a very character focused book where I worked on the character from the beginning. You know, plotted their development, their arc, I guess, from beginning to end, and world building was kind of a like it wasn't it was like an afterthought. It was like, I don't care necessarily because it was the world itself didn't really matter. It was just the character and how they interacted with the people around them. You know, so the character itself, they were like in high school, they were like, you know, coming to terms with their sexuality and stuff like that. So that was kind of the arc of the story. It was that sort of internal battle and the battle with friends and so forth. It was, that's, you know, basically that was the gist of the storyline. And so like obviously like for a story like that, the bulk of the work goes into creating that person and creating the background. And so like it's like taking world building, but instead of building the complex background and histories of the world, they're doing it for the character itself. You know, like why do they feel this way about this one thing, or why do they um, uh, react negatively to this, or you know, basically it's like, yeah. So for that book, I didn't really do any world building. It was just like Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, you know, and then that was it. And then
okay.
that food place, that's where they eat at. It's literally a place called The Food Place where they eat at. They have good burgers. And also, I think I have a T-shirt that says The Food Place on my website if you want to buy it. But you know, I don't blame you if you don't. But yeah, so that's like the contrast between world building and character develop or character building. It's like which one's the real focus, which one is really driving the story along. And you know, for that book, it's main character Alex Marston. You know, enigmatic, mysterious, because you know, at first it's a mystery, so to speak. But you know, and then you look at this dystopia book where it's like the world is going to shit. But you gotta build the world that's going to crap, and you gotta,
Yeah.
pardon my French, my profanity. I forgot that this is
Family friendly
yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Although I think I've sworn a couple times on here. I try not to.
Damn. But anyways, yeah. So it's kind of like whichever one gets to focus. Like you should, no matter what you're doing, you should always work on crafting a believable operating world, but you should also not forget about characters. You know, so they got to both be up to a certain standard, but they don't have to be at the same standard. You know, like you don't have to be super focused on developing the best, most perfect world when it's really just like it's just a background character, like for your book, it doesn't really matter like who the mayor of your town was in 1982.
Right.
It's kind of irrelevant. But
right.
for the book I'm working on, the Green Detroit thing, there's I'm going to reference the Detroit, they declared bankruptcy in like 2010 or something like that. So that's something that's in most of the books, not that important, but in this book, it'll kind of be like the turnaround point for Detroit, where like things start getting better after that point, where eventually they get more investments, and population starts actually increasing for the first time since the 50s. And it's a whole like comeback arc coming that's gonna start with that one moment where things they can get rid of their debts and they can move forward. So like it's little details that like maybe even in my book it's not that important, but like it helps to kind of plot the course from where something's at to where it's going to go. So I'm out of breath.
No, that's good. No, I think for me, I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like I have, like I said, basic bios, but I also tend to see where, without forcing it too much, to see how characters interact with each other. But I still have like the broad idea, like, okay, the main detective and the second in command, they don't really see eye to eye, like they're cordial or whatever, but the second in command felt like he should have been, I think I said this last week, should have felt like he should have been the chief before this guy, before the main detective was hired. So there's like there's a little back and forth with that. And then I have the same thing with the female character, who's like probably even better than the second command. And then the greenhorn guy, who is still kind of immature. So she acts, it's like a brother sister. I said this to brother sister bond, sort of like older sisters trying to help the younger brother out, but they riff a lot. So that I try to like keep that going, but without forcing it, because sometimes like I remember writing some stuff, dialogue with them, and it just seemed forced, so I had to get rid of it. And then I had to go back and try to figure out a better, smoother way to make the reader understand that, okay, this is how it's going to go for a little while, but it's going to be funny, but also sometimes it could be serious as well. Like they'll work together in sticky like situations where they need to be, serious, but in other situations it's just they riff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's sometimes getting that dialogue to be like organic is difficult.
Because then I sometimes think like, okay, how would I say this? And then I'm like, okay, sometimes I'm weird and awkward when I talk.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, maybe not this,
but also
maybe
like, you don't want
else.
Also, you don't want every single character to sound like how you would talk though. Also.
Yeah.
So like imagine like 40 different Andys all conversing with each other.
Everybody, they would be like, okay, no, I'm done. I don't want to read this book anymore.
Talk about a panic hamster.
It would be a very, very much a panic hamster.
Yeah. So I think that's something I like to tell myself I don't have much trouble with it, but kind of writing dialogue from different perspectives. I like to think that I'm able to be aware of different points of view on a conflict, or just where to go in a conversation, based off of different personalities, because that's a big part, is like, what is the character's personality? Are they kind of overbearing? Are they what's the right word? Outgoing, full of themselves, or really confident in themselves, able to, or are they more introverted and shy and, not likely to talk in a conversation, or maybe they'll give shorter answers, like, so all those things kind of determine how a conversation goes in a way. And so it's like, it can be challenging remembering all these different factors and using that to push a conversation forward or as organically as possible. But it's also, it's going to sound cliche, but it's kind of magical in a way, because it's like,
so I'm kind of starting research in a way, is that it goes back to that webinar that I watched and those two authors. So I'm reading the guys or Ace Atkins' new novel. I just got it today at the library because the book I got before was not up my. It wasn't. I thought it was going to be something. It was something else. It's like I don't. This is not as interesting as I thought it was going to be. Um, Not taking away from the author because I've read a couple of his books that were really good, but just not. I don't really. Side note: I don't really like. I prefer to have just like I don't know, basic sort of crimes, not like, oh, this guy has like this one was he had some sort of not poison, but some sort of medicine that could possibly cure cancer, but also could kill a bunch of people too. It was a weird, and then he was killed, and then and then so they started searching for like this dangerous group of people, and I'm like, this is not. I don't want this. I'm good.
It's kind of a big crime.
Yeah, it's more than the basic like, okay, he was killed over there. Let's go figure it out, sort of thing. But anyway, so I'm gonna read Ace Atkins' newest book, and then I'm gonna read the female author who was like the co-star, her new book to see because they had different perspectives. Like I bring this up a couple times, but her character building goes as she writes, and she uses more, I think, kind of world building, and like also she uses houses as characters too, like places. So I'm gonna read those two books, I think, to try to see if I can incorporate any of that, maybe too, to try to change it up because I'm stuck right now. But I also just have to do the regular research about cops and shooting guns and all that other stuff too. So that's the goal. Hopefully, if I don't, just sit on my phone when I need to write instead. Sometimes I catch myself watching way too many YouTube videos and I'm like, oh crap. There goes an hour and a half of my life that I didn't need to waste.
Yeah, I like to think that my wastes of time are research in a way. Like I watched some YouTube videos on future cities, but also I've played Cyberpunk 2077 a lot, which is it's a video game that's set in a sort of corporate dystopia, and I like to think of that as research, but that's mostly me just wasting time. Also,
I have to, like I said, I need to stick the freaking LA Noire disc in my Xbox and play it, but I haven't done that yet either. Kind of, because I also enjoy sitting outside when it's nice out because I haven't been able to do that in a while. So it's like, okay, you gotta pick your battles here. Not having 2 consecutive days off. I don't know about you, but it's just like you got to do a bunch of running around the first day to try to get stuff done, and you go back to work, and then the second day you try to do stuff, and then shit hits the fan. Excuse my language. Sorry.
Watch your profanity.
But
I mean, for me, when it comes to writing or researching for writing, I can do it like anytime that I'm not at work or not busy with schoolwork. I can sit down and do it. But
I also have to get out of like my room and go somewhere else where I'm not distracted, like having the TV on at 90, watching John Wayne, or today it was Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra Western movies today while my grandmother is cooking and yelling on the phone because her brother can't hear, sort of thing. And I have my headphones in, but then I'm just like, I'm not in the mood to do this at all.
Yeah, it is quite an environment.
It's a typical Italian family environment if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, you should record it and then throw it on Spotify so you can have like when you can't sleep, and you can put on some music to try to go to bed too. And you could just have Italian noises.
Italian noises. Oh, that would be funny.
I'm allowed to say this because I am 28% Sicilian, so I have the Italy card.
I mean, I'm not full Italian, so it's but still, there's enough where it's like, damn, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It definitely overtakes whatever else I like, English or whatever that I also from my mom's side.
I do speak English.
Great.
So, question. This kind of ties into what we're talking about. Do you ever use your ancestral background in how you develop characters or environments?
The main
Sounds like a
character,
yes.
the main character is Italian. Tan wears an Italian horn chain like this.
What's the main character? If you're willing to disclose this information, what's the last name of the main character?
Russo.
Russo. Okay.
It used to be Rizzo, and someone told me they're like, no, that's too much. Like that's way too much. I don't know. I'm infatuated with the name D'Angelo. I don't know why, but I was gonna make it that, and I was like, that's way too much.
Yeah.
His first name's Anthony, so they call him Tony.
Yep. A little bit of a Italian.
There's so there. It's funny because now that you say that, I have on the side of every main character, I have
a picture of the flag of Italy.
No, I have their like their heritage. So Italian, American here, and African American, English, French heritage, and so
the French heritage. They speak French.
No, it's just the name I came up with was like English French. So
Richard, I've never done that before.
Richard Montgomery, and I'm like, it's more English, but I gave him some French in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why actually, but then I didn't come up with like the main mad.
It makes sense.
The main mad guy was the bad guy is white. White. I after the main characters, I was like, oh, hold on, and then somebody else that has English heritage, but I'm not gonna name drop that character on air because they've kind of played important role at some point.
Fair enough. Yeah,
I could because it may interest people to wait and see how my writing is and if I can get it out to the world. But also like maybe later, not right now.
Yeah, I don't really in developing my characters, I've never really written or I've never made note of their backgrounds or their ancestral backgrounds. As long as they're born in America, like that's whether or not they're French or Italian doesn't really matter too much to me. I mean, granted, it varies person to person. Like if in my short stories that I used to write about mob related stuff, I mean, everyone had an Italian last name, and most of those last names came from old family trees. One of these days when I've never published anything mob related, but if I ever do, it's going to be about the Tamburello crime family. Okay, that's one of my favorite last names.
You got to watch
great.
Got to watch the Bugging the Mob on Netflix.
Yeah.
If anybody's into the mob, it's really interesting stuff. Because I thought about writing a mob short story, maybe still.
Yeah. But I want to, but at the same time, I feel like the stuff that I would write isn't even close to reality. Because like most of what I know comes from either video games that have mob, media in it. I don't know what to call it, mob representation in it, I guess, or it comes from movies like mob movies, anything from Martin Scorsese or The Sopranos, and I don't know how much that stuff is just embellished to make it look cool and romanticize it and glamorize the mafia.
Oh, 100. I mean, I bet you The Sopranos is. I heard that's the most realistic, but also it's still romanticized.
Yeah. So
I mean,
and not to mention the fact that like the mob itself is like a fragment of what it used to be.
Oh yeah.
So I think ever since like the 90s or so. So it's like whatever I do would have to take place, back in the 70s or whatever, which is not
You can make them start up again.
well, I thought about that, but like how how does it survive? How does a new organization, let's
It's a
say,
work. It's a work of fiction. So
yeah,
who gives it?
I mean, look, in theory, I mean, I could tie that into a future. It could be like a short story to my current dystopian novels, because one of the things that I work on in the future is a more decentralized government,
Yeah.
and which is just a product of what happens through after a few events. And so, in a decentralized government, federal government at least, that would remove a lot of regulations and oversight that has kept the mob in check for the last 30 years. So that's an idea, but that also, I guess that kind of goes back to world building a little bit too. But
It does.
um,
I think after like dissecting how we world build and stuff the last two episodes, it really that's what it comes down to. Is like that's the starting point. Is your setting and your characters. To you can have a general idea. Like I've been sitting on this novel crime idea since I was probably 12. I want
really?
to say, yeah. I but because originally I forgot I had writing. It's at home. It's in a box with all my college writing too. It was a notebook of these two teenage detectives. Were doing like what I'm like searching for this um serial killer, and one of them could fly owned an airplane at the age of like 18 because he could, or so I don't even remember I don't even remember how old they were, but he won it in a contest. It was I used real town. I didn't create an old town or anything, but that's how it all started. And then I was like, that's kind of aggressive for this like brother team searching for this serial killer who is killing these women.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how
So
my fantasy series started off. It's just like some far out idea from when I was like 15 or something. I haven't had a project that long though, or since I was, like you said, 12, right? Like
yeah,
I've got like short stories, but I've kind of like, that story that you had? Did you write out anything for it, or is it
I
just
wrote
like ideas?
chapters. No, I was like I had like probably a decent amount of chapters.
All right.
Last time I was home, I didn't pack that box when I first moved here because I didn't think of it because for one, I didn't know you existed at the
Most
time,
people didn't.
and I didn't, I didn't expect to have a website with short stories or have a podcast like this. So
Yeah,
I didn't think my career as a writer was going to go anywhere,
fair enough.
So I didn't. For right now, I don't see it as being my main career, but it's still something I want to do and pursue. So it was 2 years makes a whole lot of difference. I mean, there was a lot of experiences that helped me, write some of the stuff that I've written for sure, but I didn't think to pack it like
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
yeah, fair enough. I mean, I got a few folders of old stuff that I don't. If I knew I was moving for a long period of time, I'd probably bring them with me just because I like to go back through them. I like
Yeah.
to reminisce the old days, look at my old short stories from like 2011.
I think there's a short story in there from I took a fairy tales class my senior year of college, and it's uh the story of the three pigs, but it's the viewpoint of the wolf. I can't remember how it ended or how it really went, but I definitely I was like the only creative writing major in that class because it was full of like freshmen.
Yeah.
They usually never let the seniors take it, but for some reason that year they let seniors take it because it was kind of like it was an easy class to take. Because you at that point you're just trying to fulfilled your major requirements. You're just trying to, get the
That's the time.
credits. Yeah, just get the credits to make sure you graduated on time. So, yeah,
Makes sense.
But that was I don't even think I thought thoroughly about character development or world building at all.
Yeah, I know. Like a lot of my
Oh
old
no, it was Little
stories.
Red Riding Hood. It wasn't. Was it Little? Yeah, it was Little Red Riding Hood from the Wolf, I think, or Three Little Pigs. I can't remember. Something like that.
Yeah,
Something that had a wolf in it. But yeah, that was a little side tangent. Sorry, but it. But yeah, like I said before, you definitely got to make sure you world build. I think maybe not. I mean, depending on how extreme it is, I think there's a happy medium between you, how you do it and how I do it,
yeah,
depending on what you're trying to say and what you want your world to look like and how people perceive it, I
yeah.
guess.
It depends on how important is the world to your story.
Yeah.
Is it even important at all to even disclose where you're living at? You know, like you
Yeah.
could theoretically have an entire story that takes place in an unnamed town because it just doesn't matter. You know, like, oh yeah, there's Main Street, there's the old Blockbuster. Now
Yeah.
it's a Pizza Hut. You know, little things like that that kind of help maybe say when the setting takes place. You know, it's a small town. There's just one main street and one high school. You know, oh, it's a small town, I guess. You know, like you don't have to like go too into detail. Just a little bit of like little passing comments from characters
Yeah.
here and there, and just
I mean,
whatever the story calls for.
my rational series, there's not. I don't have names for the two quote unquote cities that it takes place in because it's not important.
Yeah,
You have like the beginning of when the main character, drives to that house that he was so used to, being in, to trying to think, what have I published up to this point? Oh yeah. And then driving to, this other place to, see whoever. So that's another city, but it doesn't play an important role.
yeah.
It's just the
That's not
only,
the focus.
yeah, because the only important part is that it takes a while to get there. It's in a different state.
Yeah,
That's the only thing. Other than that, it's like, one, you don't want to really, I guess, disclose what you're actually talking about. And then two, it's just a city in a different state.
yeah. I think
That's it.
also when you keep the setting kind of what's the right word, ambiguous, I guess, then
Yeah.
it it can be more relatable to more readers.
Yeah.
I feel like because everyone comes from a place with a road and buildings, with varying amounts of buildings and varying lengths of roads, I suppose. But like, as long as you keep it kind of ambiguous and concise, and you focus mostly on the important details, then you can kind of relay your message.
I think the only tidbit of like information I gave to like maybe give you a hint is the climate of each place. So
Yeah,
you started off and it was this certain setting, and then you drove however long and it was now different climate. Like you had to have, so that was it. I mean, you could take guesses, people can take guesses. I don't know how many people really know what the actual story is about.
something to do with like Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
That's what I
The
thought.
the Swiss Alps and then the hot chocolate. Yeah.
What's the capital of Switzerland?
I don't know. I don't
If
know.
you're watching this video on YouTube, leave a comment down below. What's the capital of Switzerland?
Without cheating.
Yeah, or if you're cheating, I'm actually kind of curious. I feel like I should know this, but I don't. It
I don't
helps
know.
with world building to know the capitals of.
It does if you name a capital, if that's important, especially if it plays an important role. Do you have capitals in your world building?
I mean,
They have.
like
Is there one that plays an important role?
Yeah. I mean, so this really only applies to my fantasy stories, but like, there's kind of like a major town or city for the continent and each region. So like over time, it's broken down by kingdom and so forth, and each kingdom usually also has a form of capital. You know, yeah, usually, yeah. would say yes, generally speaking.
Yeah, I know the book I started reading, the author focuses in on like the counties actually more than the town. I think he names the town that it takes place in, but it's more important. Like the county lines played an important role
Yeah.
too, which is interesting because I never thought of something like that.
Yeah. For like sparsely populated places, the
Yeah,
county
that's
is
what it is. Yep.
more, the seat of government, the seat of all the public services is all county based as opposed to city based. So
Yeah, small
I think
town,
makes sense.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
That it takes place. Yeah.
Let me guess. Lee County.
No, it's
Uh,
a fake one.
oh, the
Thibodeau County. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it.
I don't know for a fact, but I feel like that's the last name of a Confederate general. If it's Mississippi, never mind. Okay.
I mean, we
there's
can look. Maybe I don't know.
although I will say, if I were world building and I was to come up with a fake Mississippi county name, I would look up like Mississippi generals of the
General
Civil
names.
War.
No, I got the Lee one. I got that.
I didn't say you didn't.
But no, it makes sense. See if
Yeah. But
people
that's
pick because I'm also
like, this is kind of like a half joke, but it also does go back into the world building. You're looking at the history of Mississippi as a state and using that information to kind of further build off of it and such,
Well, I guess I don't know if it's really a secret, but in my book, I'm trying to like incorporate clues for the reader to try to figure out what character is doing this killing without giving it away until like the end when they figure it out by putting like hints of like maybe what they do for a living, but in a word that like is associated with it.
What kind of word?
Stuff. I'm not going to say it on air. I'll tell you after, but
I think I already know what it is, but
probably because I think I told you what he does for.
I think so.
I think so, but
I won't say anything.
I appreciate that. But I'm going to try to do stuff like that. I mean, even in my short stories, I put details that not everybody picks up on that, actually mean something. I'm curious to see if my new short story, I know I gave that to you to read, if people pick up on, you picked up on it, the thunder claps.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious to see if people picked up on that. I will pick up on it, but I have to put that out first.
Maybe that could be your Christmas gift to the world.
It could. That could be an early Christmas gift because I don't know when and what time to put this stuff on anymore.
Put it whenever.
I really don't know. Maybe I should do it after we stop recording the podcast just to do it.
There you go. I mean, might as well. It's the gift that keeps on giving because you can always go back and reread it and try to figure out what exactly he means by thundering.
I think I'm going to post that short story, and then for the grand finale, I'm going to have the whole document and the way you're supposed to read it put on my website. So you have to read the whole thing to see the ending, or you can skip to the ending because I'm going to keep like the headings for this, like the titles for each story. But I think that's how we're going to end it here, and that series because it's pretty. I think I tried to write a little bit more, and it was. I guess you couldn't really character build because you're starting to pull the same stuff out of the
treading over ground.
Yeah, and it's just like it's after a while you're like, no.
Yeah,
because that's sometimes when you're reading authors, like they all have the same style. Like James Patterson has the same similar crime stuff or crimes, I guess. So after like you're reading the same one the sixth time, you're like, okay, time to switch up authors for a little while and then go back to kind of refresh.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I gotta say I don't read from the same author a lot, so I always have a lot of variety. I haven't been reading that much, to be honest. in fiction, anyways. I've been reading plenty of nonfiction.
Could say, well, there's because you have an excuse, you're in school. But I mean,
I mean,
it stems.
even my non-school books that I'm reading right now are nonfiction. They're
No,
historical. They're historical analysis, I guess. Boring as hell, but fascinating to someone like me who enjoys stuff that's boring as hell sometimes. So,
well, actually, you bring that up. There was a book that actually I saw on Twitter. I follow this account that uh promotes different crime novels, and there was one that takes place at the end of World War II, and there's a murder, and it's like that world building. I mean, you have to do a lot of research to make sure you are accurate. Probably, I'm like curious to read it. I don't know if it's out yet, just to see how accurate it is. I mean, obviously, names and the crime itself are fictional, but I mean, it takes like they're talking. The expert said that it might, or the story is like if that the murder might be the cause of like World War II not ending. Like it could have been like so someone killed someone from the other, sort of thing. So it could be the cause of World War II to continue. So I was like, that's interesting.
like historical fiction.
Yeah,
It's interesting. One cool idea too would be like during that time period, having a like let's say you have a crime that takes place somewhere in Central Europe, and it's like, the the late months of 1945. The war is over, but you still have multiple armies all about. You've got the Red Army over there, and then you've got the English and over here in the UK. You've got all these different groups of people here. Let's say if a crime that takes place, maybe the evidence points towards one of these occupying groups, and I can imagine that, like you're in this German village or whatever. It's been liberated by the Allies, but the crime takes place. But it might have been from one of these
different
Allies groups of people. And it's one of those interesting stories.
I feel like you definitely have to do a lot of research to make sure you're historically accurate on that. That would give me a lot of anxiety.
It wouldn't be too difficult. I mean, it's pretty well documented, like which which areas, because like most of Germany was occupied, I think, until like the latest 1949. I think I don't remember exactly how long, but so all I'd have to do is pick one of these different regions, and then or one cool. I mean, we want to talk about historical fiction. You could pick a spot in was it Alsace-Lorraine, this little region that keep up until World War II's ending. This region kept going back and forth between being French and German. So you could have a sort of crime that takes place. Maybe it's because after World War II, this region goes back into French control. But you could say maybe some Germans are upset that they lost the land or so forth. There's so many things you can do with that. But unfortunately, I'm not big into writing crime dramas, so it's not my story to tell.
Yeah, no,
maybe I could assist someone in telling that story.
You could, or you could just be like, yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I'm not going to take it because I would be the type of person to be afraid that I misrepresented or mistook the information and wrote it as it didn't happen. I mean, you can kind of get away with it with fiction, but it's still, you're like, okay, this is a real place during a real time.
Yeah, I mean, you can still write about fictional crimes. The only thing I would focus more on is the legal system there, because that's a big thing.
Be like, they whipped out their cell phones. You're like, well, no, it's 1945. Like that's not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a rookie mistake right there.
That is a very big rookie mistake. I couldn't think of something more articulate at the top of my head, but
I haven't written a whole lot that takes place before. Like, I think that the farthest back I got to was in the 50s. I wrote that for it's not anything that I've published. Technically, that I've published, I went back to the 1800s. I had a short story about this small posse, I guess, this group of outlaws that were looking for the this elixir that granted immortality, and they found it, but only they had to drink the entire vial in order to live forever, and there were like 7 group members, so they all killed each other trying to get to it.
Sounds like the Fountain of Youth.
Yeah, that was a cool story. I called it the last enemy to be destroyed, and I think it's actually technically a biblical reference to death being the last enemy, and which I got that from Red Dead Redemption, which is a Western game, if you ever heard of that. But
I have heard of it, never played it.
I might need to put some of these short stories out on my website. They are available on Amazon as a collection.
There you go.
Books buried in there, but maybe I'll start releasing those.
Probably. I mean, it's a good idea.
Yeah. True. So
we really got off topic. I mean, we didn't, but we did.
It all goes back to world building. I mean, technically everything is world building and character development. So it
is.
When it comes to writing, it's impossible to leave that. But I guess it is probably a good time to wrap up this show before we hit the 2-hour mark, because if we don't, it'll hit the 3-hour mark and so forth. Is there any final comments or concerns?
Well, or is my
concerns? But...
Well, no, my every time someone says that, it reminds me of my economics teacher in high school. Would be like, we would start the class, tell you kind of what we're doing, and he'd be like, any questions, concerns, comments, or diatribes. Do you know what a diatribe is?
I do not.
A diatribe is basically someone it's basically a rant, to put it to rant or like to concern about whatever is going on. And we always had this one kid talk about it. Sometimes it didn't even matter of like, or concern what we were going to go over that day. He just always had a diatribe, and we would look to him every day. Even my teacher, he would wait. It was hilarious, but that's a side note. But every time someone says comments or concerns, I always think of comments, concerns,
diatribes.
Diatribes. There's another one in there, but that's another weird side note. Sorry, I had a lot of those today.
Well, to the audience, if you know what a diatribe is, leave a comment down below, because I had no idea what it was, and I'd like to know if I'm the only person that doesn't know what that means, or if there are others as well. I don't want to feel alone here. But also, if you're listening or watching on either Spotify or YouTube, let us know what you find more interesting out of the books that you read or the short stories you read. Do you find the character building to be more interesting, or the character development, or the world itself? Which one do you get more lost thinking about? It would be cool if somebody left a comment.
It'd be wonderful. And even if you have more topic ideas, I know sometimes we've been going more broad because it's, not gonna lie here, it's a little easier to express and talk about rather than really specific topics.
As it turns out, like, when you don't narrow your topic to just libraries and bookstores, you can talk a bit more about stuff. But
that was a tough episode. Hopefully you still enjoyed it, but I think that was the toughest episodes that we produced. Yeah. Maybe the first one, only because we were super nervous, but
I did mind the first one. It was like that one, the library one was the toughest one for me, just because I didn't have that much to add to it. That was the thing. So it's like, how do I talk without really saying, like,
knowing what the heck we're talking about?
Well, yeah, it's saying a lot without saying anything, I feel like. And that's what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Anyways, follow us on the social media.
Yep.
Buy our merch.
Yep.
Support independent creators and authors. And
tell your friends.
And have a happy holiday, whatever you're doing, and may it be a safe one.
Yes.
And
a healthy one.
And a healthy one. Yeah. Hopefully nothing bad happens. Nothing with the new strain of the virus,
and hopefully Santa brings everything that you are looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exciting
then
part.
and then I guess one last thing, be on the lookout for new stories. I guess probably gonna have, if not one or the whole thing, drop by the time this airs. We'll see. Definitely the one. Probably going to do it in like the next hour. For being honest, you guys convinced me to do it in the next hour and a half.
Heck
But
yeah.
be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for Todd's new work. And hopefully we'll have new manuscript for our new books out and about sooner than rather than later.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
One
the goal.
can only hope.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for putting up for us. Oh, Jesus. Thank you for putting up for it. With Andy, you do the outro. I can't talk right now.
Thank you for listening. As always, I'm Andy. That is Todd. And we will see you next time. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.